Een windstreek en een beetje erbij dan.
Ja, ja.
Ten eerste. En ten tweede, de meeste gesneuvelde in de dag.
Oui, alors ce que vous pouvez faire, vous pouvez consulter le site de la Commonwealth.
Dit is ook het stukje van die ridge, die verhoging,
Ja.
waar we nu net afliepen.
Ja.
With dignity. So I think I will say myself, my word is that's not a circus. Men were died during the Battle of Fromelles, were buried there by the Germans, and I think they need a proper resting place, and it must be with honor and with professionalism. So that's for why it's fenced. And also I think meantime to avoid contamination by DNA, for the DNA research. That's for why, and to allow I think a proper work. Imagine you are yourself an archaeologist and you have 1, 20 or 30 people looking at you always. That's very a big stress I think for people who are walking. So but himself I think we must do I think a window to allow the people to have a look on the site. And then going back to the German process, orders were given by von Scanzoni, who was the commander of the Bavarian division at Fromelles, at all levels of the division, 21 copies of orders, which were these following ones. The enemy, I think, the enemies will be buried behind Pheasant Wood and following this process. All things and possessions will be collected and put it into a bag and labeled with a rank, the name, and of course nationalities, and everything will be kept like this. And of course bodies will be guarded by sentries and of course in accord with regulations and in charge of sergeant majors in charge of this process. The pits will be dug and deep enough or enough I think to bury about 400 bodies, and the doctors will assist with all equipments, and a mixed soil with lime will be put it on, and layers will be covered with lime and soil, and at a depth of about 2 meters, and then when the process will be finished, all pits will be well filled in with earth and well closed in. So that's what we did in 1916, and which was visible. I think he based his research and basically results on photographs and on the side of the site before and after the battle. Clearly I think we can see the different pits, and 3 let open. We have numbers of the different pits, and you can see 876, that's a 3 let open by the Germans with of course no bodies inside them, and perhaps potatoes and some scrap metal of some barbed wire or everything or dust, and put it into these pits after the armistice time by inhabitants of Fromelles coming back after the war. But we don't know, last year I think nothing in these pits, but they will be reopened to be sure by the men of the people of Oxford. In the 6th one there is some parts of people, it means I think some demembered bodies, legs and arms, and were put it in a corner of the pit number 6, and of course filled up, or partly filled up with soil. Of course it will be reopened, and of course these parts of body will be of course reinterred into the new cemetery. And what they are doing at the moment. It will take I think in all 5 months till the end of September, and the end of the process of exhumation of the bodies at Pheasant Wood. So then we'll have the next step. I will explain you when at the cemetery across the road. Yeah. And as with every group, I propose I think to have a minute of silence for these men who are buried here, and to have to say the ode to the fallen before I think we leave that place. Thank you.
even ik denk dat wel.
Where will be buried the soldiers found at Pheasant Wood, and from February 2010 to the early in March, daily burial parties for the soldiers, with of course full military honors, with salvos, with soldiers of both nations, of both countries, and the two last ones will be kept for unveiling of the cemetery, opening of the cemetery on the 19th of July in 2010. In presence of VIPs and some authorities, we are speaking at the moment, we are speaking not sure about, I think the President Sarkozy will be here, but perhaps the Queen, the Prince Charles will be here, yeah. And of course the Prime Minister of Australia, Ministers of Defence of three nations. But most important thing, the families of those buried at Pheasant Wood and who fought at Fromelles, and of course the inhabitants of Fromelles, and all those interested or involved in the story of World War I. Yeah. You can see actually, I think roughly, the shape of the cemetery. Of course it will be dug very deeply due to the water. So about, say, 1700 meters cube, 1,700 meters cube of soil will be removed, I think, and then the bottom will be gravelled. Some sarcophage or some concrete boxes will be laid down with all the beams, I think, for the stones. And then the bodies in coffins will find their place into the beams. And with, of course, the standard of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, it means, I think, allowance and 8 stone white ones with the same shape. And at the moment, probably an Australian or British renowned soldiers, known unto God, and perhaps when identified, and with possible DNA research and samples, and a change for the official name and the name of the soldiers. So, but that's not at the moment for this. Soldiers will be buried and with on graves at the moment, because of course the research will take a long time, I think, to do, probably perhaps 1 or 2 years, I don't know, I'm not an expert for DNA research. That's what you can see. The interest of the cemetery, what I like to do and to say is, they were not far from the church, where they were before, and it depends if you believe or not, but they could hear, and I will say the routine of, the life routine of the village, with the bells, with the funeral services, weddings, and that is different things. And I think they will continue to hear these bells and closer now. They will be located into the heart of the village of Fromelles, which is very important for the families and for inhabitants of Fromelles. Not buried far from the village, and first time it was proposed at Vissy Corner, there is not the place to bury them there. But we are standing up now at a place where will be the cross of sacrifice with a platform. Yep. From here you can see Vissy Corner Cemetery. So it was the interest. There is a gap through houses where you can see the cross and of course the chapel of the trees and the walls of Vissy Corner. So a view on the former battlefield and on Vissy, where Australian soldiers are also buried. That's another interest of the cemetery. So they expect lots of people at Fromelles. That's about 3,000 or 4,000 Australians. And of course many other British, I think, we now are coming very interested in the research for Fromelles. And I will say the interest in Fromelles 16 is now growing up, or is very high now at the moment in UK, with more interest. You know, I think the British or United Kingdom suffered very high casualties with third and 3 battles around Ypres and the Somme and many others, so I think very high casualties. But for Australia it was very important, because that's the beginning of a nation, as an identity and forged during World War I. Of course, I think they fought really proudly beside Allied and other soldiers of the Commonwealth, but also beside the French soldiers. It was said in 1918 by our President and also the Prime Minister, which at the time, Georges Clemenceau, I think, was well appreciated, and the help given by the Australian soldiers, I think, to France for the liberty. Okay, now you have finished this part of this afternoon. Now we go back to the museum for your visit, when with the coach and with everybody we'll have 3 other stops afternoon.
Right.
Thank you.